Hello, my name is Phil Seaver. I am the principal partner of Seaver Story. We're here today with our educational video series with Ben the intern, where we help Ben and folks watching these videos understand more about eminent domain and some of the concepts, issues, questions. So Ben, what's our topic today?
My question is, how do you value your property with eminent domain?
A good question. So value is really important because that's what you're entitled to. You're entitled to the fair market value of the land that you lost and the damages there too. So let's start with fair market value. What is fair market value? Fair market value is what a willing buyer would buy for and a willing seller would sell for without any undue influence. That means any influence from the project, either positive or negative, basically any undue influence. And that really relates to project influence. And so to determine that, we have to kind of figure out what fair market value is. And there's two elements to this. Let's talk about a total take first and then a partial take. So in a total take, relatively easy, right? We determine what the highest and best use of the total take is, and then we value that property. Highest best use, really important concept. So highest and best use is what is the most profitable use for a piece of property, and not necessarily its given use, but what's most profitable. And I like the example here when we talk about highest and best use to say we have a little old lady that she lived on a street corner for 50 years, and she lives there as a residence, but all around her all this commercial development has started. And her property as a corner property is probably most valuable for commercial use. It uses like a bank or a Walgreens or some type of drugstore. But she still uses it as a house. And so their highest and best use is commercial, and it's probably worth a lot more as commercial property than as a residential property. So first of all, we look at the property and say, what's the highest and best use? And then we value it using one of three appraisal techniques. The most common and probably the most accepted appraisal technique is to look at comparable sales and say, okay, what's comparable to this piece of property? How did that sell? And given the differences between the two pieces of property, are any adjustments we have to make? So, and I think most people are familiar with comparable sales if they bought a house. They look at comparable sales and say, this is comparable to this property. This is how we should value it. And the second way to look at property is income. And income is really important for commercial properties. So for storage facilities, anything with rents, income drives sort of the value in that marketplace. Gas stations are big income properties. And this is different than business losses. This is how the value of the property based on what income it throws off. So there are certain types of properties, like I just mentioned, that the marketplace says we buy these based on what the rents are for that property. It's like an apartment complex. Let's say the apartment complex produces $5,000 a month in rent. So when we're selling that apartment complex, we sell it not based on the brick and mortar, we sell it based on how much rent it can provide. And so that means that the income value could be a lot higher than, let's say, just a comparable sales value. And the final way to value things is a cost approach. Cost approach is how much it would cost to rebuild what you had. And cost approach are usually not appropriate unless we have something kind of unique, like a fire station or a church, something that was special built. They said we had to special build this particular thing. There's nothing really comparable to it. It's not really an income property. It's something different, and it's special built for a special purpose. But to get a new one or to get another one to replace what we had, we have to figure out how much it costs to build. And so we've done some fire stations and churches where we've done cost analysis. So go back to recap. We have fair market value, willing buyer would pay and willing seller would sell for, no undue influence. Highest and best use, and then these three different ways of valuing properties: comparable sales, income approach, and costs. And when in a total taking situation, it's really easy. We just we say, okay, what's our big parcel? What's our parcel we're working with? The larger parcel we're working with? What's the highest and best use of that? And we apply one of our 3 methods and say, this is the value we're entitled to. In a partial taking situation, a little bit different. Let's say they just take a strip of the property, it takes some access. Well, then we have to value the whole property. We have to value the amount taken. So let's say that you have a 4-acre property with a building on it, and the total value of the property is $1 million, and they only take like an acre. So we have to value the acre taken. Say, let's say the acre is worth $80,000 or $90,000. But then we have to value how much is the rest damaged. So is the rest damaged by the taking? Did the taking like fundamentally change how the property would be looked at by the marketplace? Is the property fundamentally changed by limitations of access to the property? A lot of different questions as to how, like, did shape change a bunch? Was parking impacted? Did a right-of-way get really close to an improvement? A lot of different ways to look at residue damages. I won't go into all those right now, but just generally, when you have a partial taking, you need to look at how the rest of the property is impacted at the end of the day. So it's a long answer for a really short question. What is that? Bring any other questions to mind, Ben, after I said that?
Yeah, I do have one more question.
Sure.
So say I think my property is getting undervalued by the appraisal, like, is there anything I can do, or do I just have to deal or like accept the appraisal given?
Well, so the state, we're almost always going to disagree with the state's appraisal. The state's appraisal will be done in such a way as to maximize the benefit for the state. At least that's been our experience. When you're talking to your own appraiser, I think it's really important to say, hey, look, we need to pay special attention to highest and best use. What is the real highest and best use? We need to really look at residue damages. We need to look at all the methods of valuation, like income approach, direct capitals, and cost approach. We also need to make sure our comparables are current. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a state appraisal where they use the comparables from 4 or 5 years ago to cherry pick a low price. So make sure your comparables are accurate and up to date and are truly comparable, right? I've seen comparables where the adjustments by the state were 30 or 40%. Well, if you have to adjust something 30%, is it really a comparable? I would agree. I would argue it's not. So those are a couple of things. And I think one of the biggest things is to make sure you hire a really qualified appraiser that does eminent domain. You're not going to find the right appraiser if you just go to your standard mortgage appraisal guy. He's not going to give you what you need as a landowner. And part of when people come to our firm, part of what we give to them as part of our services is access to the right appraisers. We've got appraisers we utilize and are comfortable with. And those appraisers understand the landowner's issues better than somebody you just went off the street to try to find. So when clients come to me and say, Phil, should I hire my own appraiser? I say, well, if you're thinking about hiring us, don't hire your own appraisal. We'll hire the appraiser for you. So any other questions that raises, Ben?
No, I think that's it.
All right, good. Hey, great little video right there. I actually covered a lot of ground in that little video on valuation techniques. It's a really nuanced area. And this kind of goes back to one of our other videos where we talked about experience. And this is why experience matters. I mean, if you want to hire an eminent domain attorney that's experienced in the area, because he's going to be able to identify these value issues and help your appraiser get to the right number to make sure you get the compensation you want. All right. Well, hey, thanks a ton for joining us today. My name is Phil Seaver. There'll be a little tagline here at the end that will give some contact information if you want to reach out and chat. I'm happy to talk to you about your case. This is Ben Wallace, our intern, and thanks for joining us today.